in the experience that you're in. That's where your spiritual maturity shows up. So I want to remind you of the 5 basic principles that we teach in this way of thinking. You don't have to believe any of this. Let me put a disclaimer right there. This is what I believe. You're free to take what fits for you and what doesn't. But for me, these are the elements of my journey with spiritual maturity, and I'm guessing that some or all of this fits for you too. I have to remember in my walk in the world that there is one power and there is one presence. And it's known by a lot of different names, and it's going to show up in a lot of different ways. And if I start dropping into judgment and start closing in my box and not including a whole big plethora of ideas and belief systems and ways of being in the world, I'm not living that principle. Does that make sense? One power, one presence in the universe. Call it whatever you want. My son David, sitting over there in the technology booth, many years ago, his power and presence was Elvis. You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't care. Call it what you will. The second principle that I live by and hope that you embrace as well is that I am a spark of the energy of that power and that presence. I'm that. I am that. I've always been that. I will always be that, long before any concept of time. Carl Sagan calls it stardust. I came in divine. I'm expressing through my humanity as divinity, and I'm going out. Back to the divine, back to my original face, whatever that thing was. I'm a spark of that divinity. I got a job to do, and my job is to reflect that through my own spiritual walk in the world. Hopefully it becomes mature. My thoughts, what I think about, how I think about my life, about you, about the experiences in my life, determine the quality of my life. If I'm scared, if I'm angry, if I'm jealous, if I'm in envy, if I'm in, any one of those resentful places or not forgiving places, my life is going to be different than if I'm showing up kind and loving and inclusive and compassionate and caring. How I think about my life, how I think about you, how I think about the experiences that I see going on the planet, determine how my life's going to show up. I believe that's true for me. I need to be still. I loved it this morning as I was sitting waiting to come in. I heard Robert playing one of the songs that we have played over the years. I need to be still and let God love me. And I loved it because Robert was playing, I need to be still. And then I heard all of you singing, and let God love me. Yes? Yes. And that's what I'm talking about. I need to be still. I need to go into that quiet place so that I hear the voice of the divine giving me some guidance, giving me some tasks, some pointers on how to get through this thing. I gotta get quiet. However I do that. I'm not a good meditator. I don't go sit on a cushion, but I'm really good at moodling, at going in my backyard. Well, now there's a drought, so I'm a little limited, but at going in my backyard and hosing off the deck around my pool and watering down my plants and being very mindful, being present with the moment. And the last thing is, no matter what all of this wonderful principle stuff is about, if I don't remember it, and I don't walk it, and I don't let it inform the way I show up, forget it. It doesn't make a difference. One power, one presence, I'm part of that. What I think makes a huge difference in the way my life shows up. I better get quiet so I can hear the divine, and guess what? I better learn to walk the talk. I better walk it in my life, because if I just know about it, and I'm not walking it, it doesn't really matter. So here's a challenge. See, it's a challenge to remember that I love Daniel Nahmod's song, those of you who are Daniel Nahmod fans. Right where I stand, I say amen. This is where it is. This is where my spiritual maturity shows up, or not, or not. So this is the good news. Every single time you show up loving, every single time you show up kind, and compassionate, and not judgmental, and allowing, and going with the flow, guess what? You're demonstrating in that moment spiritual maturity. That's good news. Because you know what? When we came in, there's no place to go. There's no place to get. Wherever we are, and that's where we express our divinity. We don't learn to express it later. We don't rely on all of this, whatever this was back here, these pilgrimages and these meditation hours and whatever. We don't rely on that. That was then. Spiritual maturity is right now with this thing, in this moment, whatever that thing is. Tell a story about Mom. We were at a prior spiritual community. Senior minister, you would think spiritual maturity, right? Mom didn't quite understand that the lesson for the day was sort of convoluted and all over the place. And as Mom walked out, she said to the senior minister, you know, I didn't quite get that. I didn't quite understand that. And so the senior minister told her, well, that's because you're in the parking garage and I'm on the heliport. I'm ready to take off. See, this is the thing. In that moment, who do you think was more spiritually mature? The senior minister with all the accolades and all the... No. In that moment, the spiritually mature person was the questioner. The one who's questioning, the kind one, you see. It doesn't matter about all the rest of it. In that moment, there was no spiritual maturity. Contrary to appearances. That's what I'm trying to say. In this moment, we are having the opportunity to be spiritually mature, to discover the sacredness of all of it, to embrace all of it. I picked this picture on purpose, these dirty hands. See, for me and my journey and what I've experienced, Glenda's talking about aging, graceful aging. This is a big year for me. I'm turning 70, and I feel ageless. I am hoping to be spiritually mature in each moment, if I can be. But I don't really care how old my body is, because I'm planning to be ageless in my appreciation for the sacredness of all of life. And for me, some of life has been real dirty. Do you understand what I'm saying? I've had to get down and dirty in some cases, and some things haven't felt very nice. They've been icky. You know, I love Jean Houston. Glenda and I went to a conference years ago, and she said that the icky stuff of life, the fertilizer, it's just fertilizer for the garden of our soul. It just moves us to the next level. That's what it is. So we can't leave anything out when we're talking about spiritual maturity. If we, in one holy instant, forget the truth of our being and we lash out and become angry or judgmental or harmful, we got to do a redo because we forgot. Do you hear what I'm saying? We're never permanently damaged because we're divine. We just do a redo. We just do, oops, got to go back and try that one again. We got to include everybody. We got to include everything. And I do mean everybody and everything. And by the way, folks, we're in a political year, and this is going to be a challenge for us, isn't it? It is. And before we go any further with that, please read our webpage, because we have a disclaimer on our webpage that says, Common Ground is not a place for divisive political discussion. I say go do whatever you got to do with your political candidates, but don't bring it to Common Ground. But what I'm saying is, there's a lot of opportunity here for us to get really wound up in some of this stuff that's going on. Yes? Become very judgmental about a lot of what we're seeing happen in the world. Yes. And this is the deal. When we're talking about being spiritually mature, we cannot just talk about the nice parts. We can't just talk about what feels good. We have to be courageous enough to get our hands dirty and embrace all of it. All of it. Even the parts that don't feel very good. And this is where the stretch comes. This is where we have to have the capacity to cultivate the possibility of meeting life on life's terms, you see. To use the energy of life, to use crazy, to use terrorism, to use harmfulness, to use ignorance, to use whatever that thing is to teach us and to awaken us to our own divinity and our own spiritual maturity, so that we can see in that moment beyond the appearance, beyond the ugliness, beyond whatever that thing is. Because the minute we join with that at that same level, guess what happens? It just gets bigger. If we can bring a different energy to that, back to that idea, our thoughts determine the way our life shows up. If you find yourself really bent out of shape, take a look at what you're thinking. Take a look at what energy you're bringing to your thing. So when we have this full-hearted capacity to embrace all of it, the joy, the sorrow, to let go of our fear and our anger and our judgment and our resentment and our hatreds, and discover the deeper aspect of that, to see deeper, to be present with the underlying grace of the experience. Because this is the deal. If I am divine, and if I truly believe what I teach, then I have to know that all that stuff out there that I think is icky is divine too. And it's hard. It's very, very hard to embrace that. And this is where the middle path comes. The middle path in Buddhism. Spiritual maturity allows us to embrace both and at the same time. Not either or. Not take sides, not this, not that, but to hold all of it at the same time and be present with it in a very allowing, open way. So this is the deal. We can't claim enlightenment. Matter of fact, if you're ever around anybody that says they're enlightened, just run the other direction. Run around and hear people tell you they're mystical, probably you better go the other direction. This is the deal. We are all the energy of the divine. And how it shows up in this exact moment in time determines our spiritual maturity. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. So, here's your invitation. It's not about what you do, it's how you show up. It's what you think, it's how you are in the world. And remember that your assignment is to be that holy energy, that divine energy in all of your encounters with life. Whatever the holy instant presents you, it's your opportunity to bring forth that highest, most refined, most gentle, most non-harmful, most loving energy. We only have one assignment in our humanity, and that is to be an expression of the allness that God, source, light, love, whatever you call that thing is. That's it. And so I spend my time refining, polishing. You know, there's this story of a Buddhist monk who spent all his life sitting in a cave up in the mountains. And boy, was he ever spiritually mature all alone on that cushion in that cave. But the minute he came into town and bumped into somebody in the marketplace, guess what happens? He all of a sudden gets angry and gets mad at that person. And you know what? His awareness was, I got to go back and do a little more work. I got to go back into my cave and do a little refining here. And that's all we need to do. When we find out that we're showing up in an unskillful way, a way that's not about loving, that's not about being kind, that's not about being, open and inclusive, all we have to do is see it, recognize it, and have a redo. Oops. Better job next time, Judy. Try it again. Try it again. This is the thing. My spiritual maturity in any given moment reflects the energy that I'm bringing to the experience in that moment. And my job is to embody as many of the holy qualities of the divine that I can. Love, care, compassion, kindness, all of those qualities that the divine is. Because I have to recognize that I am, you are, we are, everybody is the hands, the feet, and the eyes of the divine expressing through this awesome human experience in this lifetime. Thank you for listening.